All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Rowan Neufeld, Events Coordinator for McNally Robinson Booksellers in Saskatoon. From this end, we're streaming live from Treaty 6 territory, homeland of the Métis Nation, and the traditional lands of the Plains Cree, the Saulteaux, Dene, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota. Thanks so much for joining us tonight for the launch of Indigenous Women and Street Gangs, Survivance Narratives. This book was published by the University of Alberta Press. And we have Dr. Robert Henry here tonight, as well as two of the book's contributors, Bev and Faith. So thank you all for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Before I pass things on, I just have a couple of Zoom housekeeping items. We've enabled the live auto captions tonight, so you can turn those on by clicking the live transcript button along the bottom of your screen. And if you have any questions, feel free to submit them using the Q&A button, and then we'll have some time at the end for those questions. So I'm going to introduce Robert Henry. He's Métis from Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. He's an assistant professor at the University of Saskatchewan in the Department of Indigenous Studies and the executive director of the First Nations Métis Health Research Network. His research areas include Indigenous street gangs and gang theories, Indigenous masculinities, Indigenous and critical research methodologies, youth mental health, and visual research methods. So really happy to have him here tonight. Welcome, Dr. Robert Henry.
Thanks, Rowan. And thank you everybody for coming and attending here for this evening and supporting the narratives within. So to begin tonight, I'm just going to do a quick little talk. Actually, before I begin, I'm going to actually let Bev and Faith introduce themselves real quick and who they are. And then I'll talk about how we came to develop the book and put it together. And then they're going to talk about their experiences of going through the process, their thoughts about it during and after, because I think what's really important is the after piece of it. And because we really talk about this in research on the impact that it has, not just within the community or what we hope that it has in the community, but what it also has with individuals who participated in research and it really opened up themselves for others to see how they've stories that we want to keep hidden for a long time, and once they're open, what does that mean to them? Because it's the bravery that they showed throughout and opening up themselves in the way that they did that I'm extremely grateful for, and so forth. So I'll start with Bev.
Thanks, Bobby. So my name is Beverly Fullerton. I am a Métis woman born and raised here in Saskatoon. I currently am the community justice liaison worker at Classic Law and a first-year university student at the First Nation University, taking my Bachelor of Indigenous Social Work.
Thanks, Bev. Faith?
My name is Faith Eagle. I am a straight up member and I'm a mom, a single mom, and I'm from South Dakota and now I reside here in Saskatoon.
Perfect. Thanks, Faith. So to begin, so this project is really a community grassroots-led initiative. When I was doing my PhD, I was working with men from Straight Up, trying to understand what is the role of masculinity within street gangs and how does this all play within street spaces. And while I was doing the work there, we were putting together a book called Brighter Days Ahead. And it started to generate a little bit of talk and everything else there. And what happened was one of the women, Faith, I believe it was you and Deb that actually came up to me and said, why are you always focusing on the men? We put in the work too. And what I told them was, let's just finish with the men's book first, and then we'll do a similar project and we'll actually make it better. We'll make sure that it's the better production, and we'll make whatever we did wrong with the men's book, we'll try and fix it with the women's book. And I told them to trust me that I would do it. I don't think they trusted me too much there for a little bit because it took a couple of years before we actually got the project rolling here. But it did, and it started from the women's perspectives. The women wanted to control it. The women wanted to tell their stories in a specific way. And so what we did was we looked at building a life history research project utilizing Photovoice. And what this is I sat down with the women who were willing to participate. So 9 participated, 6 ended up decided that they did want to move forward with the book, putting their stories into the book. And these narratives were, I sat down and I just started talking and just try, like, I call this coffee research, getting to know somebody. So the earliest memory, 0 to 5, 5 to 12, 12 to 16, 16 into the sort of the street life. And then what does it mean when you're coming out of it, and how are you trying to get out of it? And to understand this process. And so these interviews lasted, there's between 3 and 6 interviews with just getting to know each other. I allowed them to ask whatever questions they wanted about me. Mostly they didn't really want to know much about me because I'm not that interesting, and all of that. So really we focused on what their story was and what was happening, and pulling it together with the Photovoice. Photovoice is it's an arts-based method where you give cameras to people to go and for them to capture the life or issues that they see from their perspective. So it's to give people the opportunity, for those who don't live a life or don't understand certain spaces, the opportunity to see the life from their perspective. And so that's what Photovoice very briefly looks at doing. So I was able to get cameras for the women. We had to switch it, modify it a little bit. Myself, Faith, and some other participants, we ended up going to Regina to take some photographs, because some people lived in Regina and engaged in lifestyle in Regina. So that was those were some interesting trips around that. And then they would come back with their photographs and describe the photographs, and we would go deeper into this. So in the end, this project, funding, we got the funding in about 2016, 2017, I believe it was. And then I ended up leaving and going to Calgary after we finished the interviews. And I think some people got afraid that I was never coming back, or that this was going to get finished, because I kept getting emails every now and then about, where's this book, what's going on? And I said, it's coming, just give it a second. And we slowly started to build it. And I built a relationship with the University of Alberta Press, which I'm very grateful for, because they took a chance on this. This isn't really a traditional academic book. And they really took a chance to say, okay, how do we start building academia and bringing the community together in knowledge mobilization ways, in a different way. So we put the stories together, and at every level of the story that started to go through, I had the women sign off. So I had them to read their stories, make sure the pieces were in the right order, and make sure that the story that's being told, or their narrative that was being told, was actually what they wanted. Because there were some pieces that some people were like, I'm not ready for people to know this. I'm okay with you to listen to this and to understand it, but not for people to know. And so I tried to respect that as much as possible. And so we went through, I think it was 3 or 4 reiterations of getting the stories to where they came to here. And then we looked at the photographs, and we sat down and chose the photographs and went through and made sure, okay, which photograph and why, and what order were they going in, and then how would they look in the book. And so then those all got signed off. And we sent it away to be peer reviewed, and it came back with really glowing reviews. The only thing that people didn't like was the introduction that I wrote. So that was the only thing that really needed to get fixed all the time. So, so we had to fix that up a little bit, and this is the outcome. And I do want to also, with the front cover, I do want to give Faith credit. This is actually a photograph that she took with her daughters, and how we had to work with her daughters and make sure that certain ethics were followed along with all of this as well. And yeah, and this is, and it all came together in a way that I'm proud of. But I'm more proud that the women trusted me. I don't know if they still trust me, but at least they trust me to get it to this point. And hopefully we can continue working in these sort of spaces as we move forward. And so with that, I'm just going to hand it over. But actually, before I hand it over to Bev, I do want to say the whole intention was to challenge the narratives and what we've come to understand about women involved in street gangs and the street lifestyle. It's to challenge the idea that women were just there for sex, that that's all they were there for, and they were victims to their spaces. And when we read their stories and we start going through those stories, we begin to understand that there's a lot more happening within the street. They held more power than what people want to give them credit for. They were not victims to their spaces. They were finding ways to survive. They were finding ways to resist certain spaces. And in the end of it, they were finding ways to resurge. The other thing that I do want to reiterate as well is that when these stories when we finished collecting the narratives and putting them in, this was 4 years ago. 3, 4, 5 years ago, when it was all said and done with the interviews. The women have come a long way since then, but there's also been a lot of trials and tribulations in between that as well. And so this is where the women were at that time. And we have to understand that there's growth that continues to go. And that's the important part of this, is that we can look at these stories that are in here right now, the narratives that are here. And I know that the women would have far more to say, and what they don't want to say, and where they've come to today, and how to be here today. So I'm really proud and privileged that Bev and Faith are here with us to talk about this. And I'm going to hand it over to Bev now to talk about her experience, what it was, and to give an insight.
Thanks, Bobby. Faith, you sure you don't want to go first? I'm just honored to be here tonight, and to be able to sit here and share the story and share the experience. And please forgive me getting over a bit of a strep throat, so I sound like a horse. But anyways, yeah. So I first met Bobby through Straight Up. Was invited to attend a talking circle about the book, and I really didn't know what I was doing or what I was getting into. And at the time when I met Bobby, I was still on parole. I was released in August of 2014 after serving 3.5 years of a 5-year federal sentence. And so when I went into my federal sentence, I was so confused, because the life I knew was just ripped away from me. And I had people in authority telling me that I was bad and I was wrong and I shouldn't be living the way that I was living. And I fought so hard to keep my family that I had prior to going into prison, and they just wore me down. And then I became so alone in prison. Like, my children weren't visiting. So I'm a mom of 7, a grandma of a 1-year-old little boy. And, I have 6 boys, 1 girl. And one of my little boys passed away at 6 months old to a misdiagnosis at the university hospital. And it was due to racism and the way that we were treated in the emergency room. And so I just carried a lot of unknowing of who I was. And as the book shares, I'm a survivor of child and sexual abuse, and, the foster care system, not knowing, being told that I was, a half-breed and a Métis, but that meant nothing to me because I wasn't raised with any roots or any family ties. And just really going through the juvie system, getting into toxic relationships right off the hop at 17, a young mom at 18, domestic violence, getting into my drug addiction. And, my drug addiction was so fast and so hard that it led me into, where I was needle using, and I didn't know who I was, and I didn't have anybody to push away because I didn't even have family that cared if I was dead or alive at the time. And, when I found myself, so right from when I was 14, when my parents threw me out, I was on the street. I was homeless. So I learned to manipulate. I learned to survive. I learned to, follow the path of friends that I could benefit, or they could benefit. I don't know. It was always just a path of survival. And in my young adult years, how did Bev survive? I prostituted. Yeah, I tried to, manipulate relationships to benefit my children or me. All I ever wanted was, the perfect relationship with the big house, the white picket fence, the freaking dog there, and a guy that actually loved me or cared for me. In every relationship I got into, now I know, because I didn't love myself, I accepted the abuse because that's all I knew. I thought that was love. And so being in the homeless lifestyle, and just all over, no stability, I just kind of took whatever I could get at the time. And so into my later 20s, when I was in my relationship when I really was involved in the gangs, so I've always known the gang, in Saskatoon, it's a small city, so everybody knows everybody, and it used to be very territorial. And I used to, the people that I always knew hung out, but they were never had a label. And so when they finally gave themselves a gang name, I was automatically in there to watch all of that and watch it unfold and watch it develop. And then knowing how the ranks of gangs work here in Saskatoon at the time when I was involved, I was intrigued, right? And so when the leader of the gang that I've known my whole life, we were in a relationship, and I was to be his wife, and I was automatically given that authority and that power, I was totally on a path of destruction. That was all I was settling for. That's all I felt that was my life, but I loved it. And I don't talk bad on anybody, don't disrespect, because when you're in that life, that's all we have and that's all we know. And, and I still have so much love for everybody there. And it's hard to get out. But anyways, so it brought me on just so many different paths, so to go from being entrenched and being in control, but still surviving, trying to manipulate systems and, not be arrested, keep my children in my care, manipulate the CFS, because how many times they came to my home, they went to the schools to, apprehend my children. But it also shows that because I'm fair skinned and I'm white, I could manipulate the system. I could do so much, I could get away with more, and I could talk my way out of situations that I've seen, sisters or other women that couldn't do that. So I took that as a privilege, and I took advantage of a lot of the situations that I could get away with. While I was in prison, that's where it really became evident of the injustices and the systemic issues and where the human rights are violated and all kinds of stuff. Like, nobody wanted to listen, because you're just a prisoner, you're just a gang member, you're high risk, you're not worthy, you're just, wasting people's time and money. And I heard a lot of negativity. So sorry to get all over the map, Bob, you can put me back on track if you need to. But for me, I fought the system for the first year when I was in the federal institution. And I went against my will. I was involuntary transferred to the Women's Healing Lodge. And so I wasn't ready for what I was about to be forced into for programming. But I just remember being so broken and so lonely. And, everybody else that I was around was also incarcerated. My children weren't coming to see me. And it was, woe me, poor Beverly, everybody's against me. And I just remember talking with an elder, and she was just like, well, what are you going to do? And I didn't know what I was going to do, but all I knew was I was tired of hurting. I was tired of struggling. I was tired of not knowing, if I was loved or if I loved myself, or if everything was unknown. So I just made the choice that I was like, I need to figure out something different to do. My kids need me and I need me. And, so I just really started accepting who I was by myself, and when as corny as it sounds, when they say to do those morning affirmations, look in the mirror and tell yourself, I love you, and you're this, whatever, give those pauses. I thought it was so stupid, but I forced myself to do it. And I actually started believing what I was seeing on the other side of the mirror. And I started standing up for myself. And because when I went to prison, I was by myself. I didn't have my backup. I didn't have my sisters on my side. I was literally by myself. So I started standing up for myself, and I started setting boundaries. And when I went into prison, I was like, what the hell are boundaries? What are all of these things and tools and ways to act and all? Like, I didn't know any of that. And so I just started to give it an honest try. And I started getting honest. I was with myself. And I made a promise to myself that when I was released, I was going to do everything it freaking took so I wouldn't end up back in prison. Not because it was because I was scared and I was lonely, but the way that I was treated in there, and I seen the other women treated, I wanted to get out and be that voice. So long story short, I got out of prison. I got a really shitty job. I was tossing dirty laundry from the hospitals into a semi truck. And I started, really working with my parole officer and starting to build trust in the authorities, because they were always my enemy, still can be, but I knew I needed to do things differently. And as uncomfortable as it was and out of my comfort and just not knowing, I just did everything different. I'd get out of bed with my right foot. The next morning I was getting out with my left foot first, because I didn't want to die, and I didn't want to, disappoint my children. And then I connected with Bobby, and then I started, I put my voice in at the gang strategy forum. And then at that gang strategy forum, it was actually Sue Delaney she was an executive director at the time at Elizabeth Fry Society, said, we need to talk, come to the office. And I connected with her and just started sharing that, look, I just want to make these changes, and this is what's going on. Can I be this voice? How can I do this? And I was offered a position there with the Women's Sharing Circle And I tell you, like, that was my changing point, to just be there and listen to other women, but also share that hope and share that vision of our women in the city here, that we do deserve so much more in life. But to understand the struggles, those struggles are real and they're freaking hard, and addiction is hard, and leaving the lifestyle is hard, and having family is hard. Like, but how do we balance all of that? So when this story of the book was starting to like really develop, I was like, Bobby was saying, is this really happening? And like pushing the buttons. But when we seen it and I seen it, like actually there, I was like, oh wow, okay, cool, it's a book. But then when we started getting, you know, responses, and that was actually on sale at through McNally's or in all these places, and people were interested in wanting to purchase it, I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity for our voices to be heard. So yeah, it's been, and I wanted to really like make sure, my first time ever sharing my story was with Bobby. And so to have that safe space, knowing that I can share my story and it didn't get used against me and it didn't create any negative, that's what also empowered me to continue sharing my story. So I could talk forever, and I want to pass it over to Faith. That's just a little bit of what I want to share tonight, that I'm just really grateful to be here. My hopes for the book is for people of all walks of life and on this path to take something from it. One of my biggest things was just always just be kind. Everyone has a story, whether we just don't know it, right? And so if you just take that opportunity to listen, yeah, and I'm really looking forward to seeing kind of where this keeps going. So thank you.
Thanks, Bev. Faith?
All right. I don't even know where to start. It almost always makes me want to tear up because my daughters read the book, and it's about them, and my daughters are full active gang members. So it's like I have to be honest with everything, you know. I'm the things that that I put in the book was reality of my life, and I read them. They read this one part that I wrote about my daughter Summer Sky, and she started to tear up, and I didn't think it was going to be that big of an impact, like for my own children, because it was our life, or like with other people that have been reading it, and like they've been telling me like, you had a rough life, and I didn't think of it as a rough life. I thought that's just how life is, and being in one country and coming to another country and going all over in different cities, and you know, making yourself known as a female, being able to survive on the streets as young as I was, that was pretty skillful. I never once did I have to hold on. My kids are fighting. Hold on.
Life of a mom, it's never predictable.
Yeah, it's the way things go.
Yes.
No big deal. Go ahead, Faith.
My grandson, my grandson and my daughter are fighting. But yeah, just like I said, being a single mom and having to be skillful like that as a young kid, I thought that's what everybody did. Never once did I have to work the streets. I had older women that would like take me under their wing, and they would work the streets, or I would just follow along and learn to steal to survive. And I never really talked about the gang violence or anything like that, because it's still embedded in my mind, and sometimes it still haunts me. I haven't been really able to like tell like the depth of it or anything like that. Most of the people that I wrote about in my book are dead now. And that's heartbreaking, because one was my baby dad, and that was hard. And with the whole book, I didn't know what the heck to expect from Bobby, because you know, he looks like a white man. But not like for me, and I'm like, what the heck? I was like, I kept on watching him, and he'd always like tell us and explain to us. I was like, I wonder if I should trust him. But I did, because it's not just for myself, it's for my kids, and it's for other people's kids that might have a mom like me, like how I was. And maybe they'll read it and they realize my mom can change, or, you know, like I'm a grandma, or maybe they can say, oh, my grandma can change, or, you know, and I remember one question I was asked on aunties on the streets and moms on the streets. That was a tough one at the time. I didn't want to say because I didn't want to be an auntie on the street or anything like that. And I might be going off topic, but all in all, in the book, it still tears me up, and it still makes you want to cry, because my daughter's deep into the gang life, and I can only lead by the example, and, you know, by being sober, and, you know, maintaining a home lifestyle, or, you know, and having things that I didn't have growing up, being there for her, and, you know, and for my other daughter. Like, I can't say it was bound to happen or anything like that, but the area that I live in the hood. It's just like, this is life, and how we navigate through life is our choice. And in the book, I really think I talk about love and all that. That's the only thing I could show, because I was in a life full of torture and everything wrong always happening, sleeping on the floor, sleeping other places and that you weren't supposed to be, and being in jail, and in the States and in Canada. It's just things I never really talk about, but I have to start talking about it, because there's voices out there that will never be heard. They'll either die in it or they'll be murdered in it, because you can still hear their voices screaming in the streets at night in the hood here. And the only thing that I could ever bring out is just to love and show them that I'm still standing here, even though it's a scary position, that I have to still be here. And that's everything.
Thanks, Faith. So we are trying to have this as an interactive. I'm looking to see if there's any questions, and I don't see any questions up there yet. But one of the things that I get asked, and I can't answer it, is just like, would you ever do something like this again? Or what is it that, and the other part you can ask is, when researchers come into the street, one of the things that I've heard at other places working in Winnipeg and all that is this idea of voyeurism within the street, and the idea that people just want to rush into the street because they're looking for this sort of violent, weird lifestyle, the gangster image and everything else, and they're all trying to find that. What is it that you want to, that you could tell individuals who are looking to maybe do research in these areas or think about working in these areas? What do they need to understand when coming into and working with people within street spaces and street lifestyles? And I'll Faith or Bev, whoever wants to answer that one.
I think, like I said, when I talked with you, Bobby, you were really respectful and made sure that it was in a safe space. It was at my own time, you know, making sure that I was compensated. It was always great receiving $50, because then sometimes I really needed that jug of milk, but I didn't want to admit it at the end of the day. But since meeting with Bobby, I've had other encounters with other researchers and other folks wanting to, you know, do research and find out more. And some I've turned away, and some I just couldn't even do it. And others, you know, I've actually grown friendships with. And my biggest thing is, when you want to get in there and do the research and talk about this, we're not aliens. We're not violent, dangerous people. We are humans, and just treat us as that, you know, just because a lot of folks don't understand the choices we make or have to make and the lifestyle that we live doesn't mean that we don't deserve respect too. So building those relationships, not expecting to just come in and get your information and be gone and take that. Like, that is exposure. That is not a good way to treat people. You know, I'm trying to think of the word, but yeah, just not being respectful. I don't know if I'm answering your question, Bobby, but like, if you want to build those relationships, because we do want to have those our voices heard, there are systemic barriers. There are reasons why, you know, the hood is the way it continues to be, why poverty is still such a #1 issue, why homelessness and addictions is growing. We can tell you why. We have those answers, but who's going to listen and who's going to make those changes? And I think, you know, when there's so much mistrust in the police and in the healthcare systems and the prison, like, and authorities, we need to build that trust with people that are actually going to take our stories and use it in a good way. I know I don't want my story used as research and then tucked away at the end of a filing cabinet. I want to share my story for good use, and to make sure that it's going to help implement changes or open eyes and open hearts. And so that's kind of what I have to say for that.
Thanks, Bev. Faith is, so go ahead up, Faith.
Just if a researcher's gonna come in or you're coming in to ask questions, don't bring a whole bunch of people with you. Don't act like you know, to say, well, you know, this is my story. I was a drunk too. You know what? I don't care. I'm not here to hear your story. Just listen. If you want to listen and build relationship, you know, let's go out for coffee. Let's do regular things like how I could say, well, how Bobby was. He wasn't like all off, and you know, and if you want to, just be real with me, because I could smell out the fake. And if you're phony, I will tell you, and I'm sure others will too, but some of them might not. Don't expose me.
So one of the questions that popped up in here from an individual, from Winona, and she's asking, what do you hope sharing the stories can do, like to change support services? So all the way across, what do you hope that these stories can do as a collective to try and change those spaces? Or how do you think that these stories can help individuals? Like Bev, you're going into social work, and Faith, you've talked to me about this over and on a bunch of times. How do you think these stories can help individuals going into these service and these spaces of child protection services or corrections or policing or nursing? How do you think these stories can help individuals moving into those or learning about them?
Well, knowing that we're human beings and that we had like a childhood too at one point in time, and some of us may have not had the greatest childhood, but to us it was a childhood, and we don't understand why, like why addictions took a place, like for the intergenerational traumas of residential schools and orphanages that we came from, because we're just learning about ourselves. A lot of people may have had parents, but not all of us. We didn't have parents. We had our brothers and our sisters as parents. Maybe they'll learn that we're humans, and that if you talk to us, we'll talk to you just as back with the same respect. We'll listen just as well as you will listen to us. But just because we're all tattied up doesn't mean that we're not human.
Beth?
Yeah, I think the importance is, and I can even share it just from actual experience. So, you know, I've worked with some practicum students going into whether it's sociology, social work, and law. And by sharing my story with them, they're like, oh my gosh, you know, this just opened my eyes. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being vulnerable. You know, giving them an understanding that they're not going to read in a book. You can't get that same raw, honest truth, that emotion, that connection through just reading a book or reading it on paper. You know, and so these stories are meant to just really bring it to life, to be like, this is real and these things really do happen. You know, I get so frustrated. I cannot read comments anymore, like on news articles, because when there's a story of a brother or a sister who's been murdered or something that's happened in the city and it's labeled gang member, and the comments I read from our society, it just breaks my heart because they don't get it. You know, I sit at the table of, you know, some advisory committees for like the police and for Reconciliation Saskatoon. There's just so many people that don't get it. Like a lot of folks think that I wake up when I'm in the lifestyle, I just wake up and I'm choosing to get high today. I'm choosing to walk down the street. I'm choosing to, you know, do something today to just survive. But like Faith was saying, that's our reality when we're in that life. And I usually say that was my distorted reality. I was right. I was living my life because that's all I knew. So anybody that was coming in trying to wreck it, those were the bad people, even though they were social workers or this. But there's just so much more to it than just a CFS file or just a home visit or this person's getting arrested. These stories are going to hopefully open a more understanding as to why this person's even in that situation that they're in right now. Yeah.
Thanks, Bev. Got another comment, Chelsea. Thank you for sharing your stories. I have a copy of the book and I'm really looking forward to reading it. Thanks, Chelsea. I have one from Caroline. Thanks, Bev, Faith, and Bobby. If a large foundation such as the Gates Foundation, and this is a question that came to the gang conference about 8 years ago, if they had $50 million to support transformative change in Saskatoon or Saskatchewan, you were directing this change, what would be concrete changes you would feel that need to be made? And how would they be prioritized, and who would you work with? I know this is a big question, but like if there was an unlimited sort of money, like what is needed to make the change necessary for healing and wellness within our community?
I remember sitting at a table with Senator Kim Payton. She's like, Beverly, if I handed you a magic wand right now today, what would it take? What would you do? And honestly, it's a safe space in the core area that is meant to them. That's not just a program that's going to disappear in 6 months. We need to have basic skills. We need to connect with the children right from the youngest age. Not as social workers that are coming in as a threat, being like, well, if you do this wrong, I'm taking your children. There needs to be an Indigenous only, like not Indigenous only, but a really Indigenous strong focus that is going to come into the areas, and not just one area. Like, why not Sutherland? Why not the exhibition? No, why not? Like, people don't all just live in the core area. But anyway, sorry, I'm getting off topic. It needs to start with the absolute basic skills. It needs to start with cooking. It needs to start with understanding it's okay to say I love you and accept being told someone loves you. It's okay to learn how to hug somebody. It's okay. We need to learn how to forgive ourselves as parents, and then teach our children how to retrust us as well and build those bonds, those healthy bonds. It's not just something that, I'm sorry, Faith, you can jump in at any time. I just think back to what would have helped me. Or, like I think about my ex. So he's almost 50 years old. He's still stuck in the gang life. And we've had many conversations being like, if only I would have been just, given that opportunity. Because he's an Indigenous man, 300 pounds, long braid, active, gang member, has a rap sheet, whatever. He can't even get a job anywhere because of how he looks. Nobody wants to give him that opportunity. People say they will, but when it actually comes to doing that, he's never been given that chance. We need people that are willing to take these chances, and not just a one-time chance. You have to keep going back. I've seen programs in the community that really work, and bam, funding's gone. People lose their trust. There's nowhere to go. And everything seems like if you're accessing it, you're the bad person. Oh, well, why do you need this kind of help? Why do you need this? Why can't you get out of it? There's so much stigma about it being negative. So I would love to see a huge welcoming healing lodge type, not like White Buffalo, but even bigger, that's welcoming, and people can come in. And of course, COVID, but you come in and you can learn traditional ways in a way where you're not feeling unaccepted. Home visits with people that are not there to judge you, but they're just to help you clean up, help you hang up some pictures, really basic skills and basic things that so many people think that just take for granted. So one last thing, I never once had my mom read a book to me as a kid. Who does that? I never did that. I had to really learn the patience with myself to sit and read to my children, because it is hard work. A lot of other people think, okay, just go to bed, read your child a book. I'm really struggling and trying to do that because I want to be a good mom, but I never was taught that. We have to learn things in a good way. But if we don't know it, how are we supposed to be expected to do it? I don't know if that makes any sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. Faith?
Is that $50 million?
You can't keep it for yourself. We'll go that way.
No, but I was thinking if we ever had the opportunity, man, like first of all, give everybody buy a big building where you have Pampers stocked, blankets, work shoes, where everybody gets at least one hot meal a day, where everybody comes in and they can sit there and they can relax, and we'll have people like us working there saying, how can we do this? How can we navigate through this? Just like how Straight Up is, but a little bit more bigger, huge, where everybody gets a hot meal, because sometimes a lot of people are just doing drugs. They're doing things just to get money, sometimes just to eat or feed their own family. Just one hot meal, just for maybe a baby needs Pampers, let's go here, we can get Pampers or milk, and then just have like different people, like maybe like me, like some of the people I already went through the system, like being there to help them navigate to go to treatment, to help them get housing, to help them get a job, getting partners with other organizations that will be able to hire the people that need jobs, get work boots for the people, because I handed out 150 pairs of shoes this summer. Some of them were work boots, and I seen the men cry because they had work boots and they were like, we get to work now, and coming to hug me, having a place where they could steadily come without being like, oh, you already came here, oh, you can't do this because you already did that, just having a big building like with that's my dream. That's just, those are the things that I see in my head that I wish I could do, and wish that I could see for our people all over, where there's no racism, everybody's equal. You don't get like the jail portion size of meals or anything. You get the, you actually get to eat, and you get to feel good, like home cooked meals, because some of us don't get it. All you eat is just chips and hot dogs, and just to feel that love, and having like a mother center, or for us females, Indigenous females, to go to where we can meet up and, and just say, this is what's going on, and not have like somebody that's trying to overpower. Everybody's treated equal no matter what. And that's where my $50 million would go if I had a chance to tell somebody.
I just wanted to add in there, like, when housing right now for like poverty, when you're in poverty, it is hard to get out of poverty. And so for anybody to say, oh, get off social services, oh, you're on social services, why can't you afford this or do that, you got free stuff coming to you, I think that stigma too needs to be broken down. It is so hard to get out of poverty, and with being on assistance, like if you can't work because of a criminal record or your mental health or addictions, those are all valid reasons and health reasons, but you're on assistance. So Bobby, you're on assistance and I e-transfer you $50 just to get through the week. When you hand in that bank statement to your worker, that's getting deducted and you're getting lectured for accepting money. You are not allowed a savings account. You're not allowed to have anything worth $1,000. Like this whole, everybody's meant to stay there. There's no way of getting out. And so it's hard to do that. And, and I work at Classic Law and I take a lot of calls coming in about like systemic issues and what's going on. And every single day, it's rentalsman issues. I'm getting calls from folks being like, my house is overrun with bed bugs. I can't get rid of cockroaches. I can't move anywhere. All my stuff's been destroyed. How do I replace it? These landlords don't give two F's about it. But let's keep our people in low-income housing that isn't even livable. I would love to see someone come from Rosewood into one of these houses for one night. One of the workers or the government officials that make these policies, come stay there and see what these are being paid for. Like there's just so much. And like, I could sit here all night and tell you every little thing that's happening within our systems that just shouldn't be. But we don't have enough voices out there to just keep fighting for this. And that's why I hope with these talks and folks like even Caroline Tate sitting here and Sue Delaney, like these need to change. So much needs to change.
Thanks for answering those questions for me, because I have a lot of other answers too, or ways to think about it. But I think your voices are far more important than somebody who's never been there. And thank you so much. It's wonderful work. This is powerfully innovative. I've always believed in things, invest like affordable health, accessible childcare, parenting. Great job, Bev and Faith. That's a long one. Let's see when we need time for more questions. Time for one more question. I guess we got told here by Rowan to kind of get into the wrapping up. Because I'm going through it and the questions, it seems that you're both answering the questions that people are asking. And I think this is what's interesting about just allowing an open forum to happen, is that you actually are answering everything people are asking, but just in a different way, not directly at it, but in roundabout ways and everything else. And that's something. Before we end, I'll just say something. Like, I've learned so much from working with the women and the men, and straight up putting these two books together. Just the power and the strength and the courage that they have in sharing these stories, sharing their narratives, and trying to build these relationships over time. And I just want to say thank you to Bev and Faith for even just coming on today. Like, they don't have to be here if they don't want to be. I'm sure there's better things to do than doing this right now, and their family, and you saw the kids running around and everything else. So I just want to say thank you again to trusting, and I hope this works out. And again, there are next steps, and we will figure out the next one. So don't worry about that. We just got to be able to find some stuff. But there's one last question from Sue here. What is your biggest challenge now that you have put yourselves out there in the public with these stories?
Thanks, Sue. Not everybody's going to get it. So I'm still working on my I don't care what people think of me attitude. It's so my fear is always the backlash. Not that I should care, but then what that just shows to me is that people don't understand and don't get it. Sorry, I don't really understand Sue's question. So my biggest challenge, but also just continuing to be consistent and be there and not just disappear. I don't want this to be something that, oh, we got 15 minutes of fame to talk about it and now everybody's forgotten about it. I don't want this book just to do that. I want this to continue and grow and be there and be utilized. I guess I'm vocal about my story because it's real, it happens. And I'm so lucky to be here where I am today and making those choices and being able to keep making changes. I just want to keep pushing these stories out. So go ahead, Faith.
At first it was scary, but then I thought reality is more scarier. And for me, it's just like, if somebody comes up to me and says, yeah, I seen you in a paper, and I was like, yeah, you did, you want to come? Or like, if somebody's gonna approach me, it's like, how come you said that? I didn't say nothing. I talked all about love. You want to come? You know, I'm not afraid for anybody to approach me. I will bring whoever I have to bring, whoever's struggling out there. I will walk right into their house and go get them if that's what they want. I know that sometimes a lot of people put up a front, and that's only a front for help, and they don't know how to ask for it. So that I read a person very well. I still walk on the streets, and sometimes it does get scary. People look at me, but I don't care because I'm here for myself, and I'm here to show that there is love in this world. Even though if we still live in the hood, there's still love here. And I know I've had a lot of people ask me why I did it, and I was like, so our people can have a voice, so our people can feel love once again. And you know, there's some of the biggest gangsters that I've held their hand, and I said, sit down, hold my hand, and they have. And I said, let me tell you one thing: you're still loved, you're still human, and you're still here. And there's people that still care, you know. And I've actually that's reality, and I'll keep on doing it. I have to because my kids are in it. That's it.
Thanks, Faith. And so with that, I think we'll end it on that. I think those words were perfect. The idea of love. And I think that's what, when we read the stories, the narratives, and we go through there, we see that it is survival, it's resistance, resurgence, but it's all about love, loving oneself, loving one's family, loving one's community. And then the final thing too is to show this love going back. All proceeds, all sales proceeds that we get here are going back to the women to support programming within the city and where they want it to go. So there's no proceeds going back to myself within this. I get enough, I'm paid well enough at the university that I don't need it. And I think that by allowing the women to give back to where they want to in their community, it's also helping them give back to a place where when you read the narratives, they talk about they took so much, they want to give back so much more now. And it's just small little ways in which to support. And it goes off what Faith said, it's all about love. So I want to thank everybody for attending tonight. And hopefully if you have any other questions, please feel free to email me, get a hold of me at any chance, and we'll go from there. So, and again, I want to thank University of Alberta Press taking a chance on this book. You didn't have to, but I just want to say thank you, and McNally Robinson for hosting this event tonight. Thank you.